Well, hello, everyone. Good to see you all today. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the National Diabetes Program Support Group, and we're so glad you're here. Please jump in the chat, as always. Let us know where you're joining us from. And if it's your first time here, welcome. Let us know that it's your first time. A very special welcome to those new folks. And if you are new, we are here every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and this is your online source of information for how to tackle diabetes, lose weight, reduce your needs for medications, and just improve your overall health. So today we have a very special program. We have a guest presentation by Chef Dustin Harder on eating healthy while traveling and what are some tips and tricks to make eating on the go less stressful. And you'll learn a very helpful acronym to keep you on track. So stay tuned for that. And also today we have an amazing success story from the always inspiring Lauren Plunkett, who can speak not only to type 2 diabetes, but also to type 1 diabetes. So I see we have Susan from Tacoma Park, Maryland in the chat. Hello, we have Lynch from Fairfax, Virginia. Let's see, we've got Jill from Washington, D.C., California, all over the country. Awesome. Hello from Calgary, Edith. Hi, so glad you're here. Let us know if you're new. We want to especially welcome you if you're new here. Shireen from Georgia. Awesome. Oh, first timer from Texas, Mary, welcome. We're so glad you're here. So just a note, if you look in the chat box, you have the option to send messages to hosts and panelists, or you could drop down and select everyone, and be sure to choose everyone so that we can all see your responses. All right, so I'm going to share my screen really quickly here. And just a reminder that we're here talking about diet changes. They are very powerful. They're an amazing tool to manage diabetes. But remember, this doesn't take the place of working with a physician necessarily. So be sure that you're checking your blood sugar, you're checking your blood pressure, especially if you're on medication for those conditions, and check in with your physician, your primary care provider often. And remember, if you follow a fully plant-based diet, don't forget that B12 supplement. Okay, and these sessions are recorded, don't worry. So if you're joining late or if you missed the last couple classes, you want to go back and watch them, or if you want to share this with a friend, after this session, you're going to receive an email with a link to our portal. And that's where you can view all the recordings as well. So look out for that momentarily. Okay, so at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see two boxes down there. There's a chat box, which I know all of you are very active in. That's awesome. We love seeing you there. That's a great place to check in with each other. And if you have suggestions, if you want to share your experiences with other attendees, please do that in the chat box. If you have specific questions, though, you'll see on the right, there's a little Q&A box for those. We have registered dietitians ready and waiting to help you out with those answers. But please keep your questions general and avoid sharing specific medical information. So who are our dietitians today? I want to bring on Stephanie McBurnett and Noah Prownsma. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
Hey, Noah.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah, so great to have you with us today. These are our nutrition experts. So if you've got those burning questions, throw them in that Q&A box. If you put them in the chat, we might miss it. So make sure you focus on the Q&A box. So thank you both so much for being here.
Great. Thanks, Anna.
And let me also bring on my co-host for today, registered dietitian Shannon Gray. Hi, Shannon. How are you today?
Hi, Anna. I'm great. And I just quickly wanted to shout out there's 3 new people that I saw since you last mentioned first timers in the chat. So thanks everybody for being here. Andy, Alyssa, and Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, that's awesome. So glad you all are here. So Shannon, I know that you talk to patients all day and you have the opportunity people really make some important changes in their diets. What would you say is the #1 mistake that people make when they're trying to do a diet change, and how can we avoid that?
Wow, that's such a great question. I think, I would say I think this distinction between diet and lifestyle is huge. And I think, especially people come to me, maybe they've tried a diet in the past and it's worked in the short term, but for whatever reason, it didn't work long term. So I think we're really trying to avoid doing that again. So a diet is typically maybe they followed something, it worked for a short amount of time, didn't last. So we're really trying to avoid that and shift into lifestyle change mode where we can really make changes, make shifts in your lifestyle to make this last ideally forever, and make this something to improve your health long term and not just in the short term.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah.
Yes,
So instead of thinking of it as like a really intense short-term thing, think of it more as like something that you can sustain for the long run.
exactly, exactly. And it can be, yeah, it's kind of a different mindset and a different view than, again, maybe we've done in the past, but makes a huge difference in making your success long term.
Yeah, and if you mess up, it's not throwing it all away. You're just gonna get right back on track the next day, huh?
Exactly. Challenging that all or nothing mentality and thinking and knowing that it's okay to go off the path and get back on, and you live and you learn and how to be successful um, long term. So absolutely.
Great. And that's why we're here too, to offer support and just to help everyone stay on track as much as they can.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks, Shannon. And we have a third co-host today. I'm so glad to be joined by Dr. Neil Barnard. Hi, Dr. Barnard. How are you?
Hey there, Anna. It's great to see you.
Awesome. Glad to have you here.
Sure.
So one thing that people notice right away when they have diabetes, they start checking their blood sugar, and then they see that they eat carbohydrates, say they had oatmeal or potatoes or some fruit, their blood sugar goes up. And this might be a little scary for some people because they're told not to let their blood sugar go too high. So Dr. Barnard, are these foods really a problem? And can you tell us a little more about what's going on here?
Sure, you bet. And by the way, Anna, let me also just add my welcome to folks. It's great to see people who are new. Many people have heard of what we're doing here at the National Diabetes Program because in the past, people really thought you can't really improve diabetes. It's going to slowly progress. But the fact of the matter is that as we have seen in not only in our research studies, but in our educational programs, that diabetes gets better. There are times where you're going to need less medicine, maybe none at all. Maybe the diabetes itself will disappear for all intents and purposes. Now, everybody gets their own result, but let's see what happens. Let's put healthy diets to work. So that's what we're going to talk about really. But you were asking about carbohydrate. The old idea was that diabetes came from having carbohydrates, or it came from I was eating too much sugar or something like that. That's not really true. Type 2 diabetes starts as insulin resistance. So, and we've talked about that, Anna, sort of every week. But how about if I just kind of walk through the science of it again because we do have some new people. Is that all right?
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let me share my screen. Some of you have seen this before, what I'm going to talk about, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay. If you've seen this before, you know this, you could probably do this presentation for me, but I want to take like 3 minutes to talk about insulin resistance, because this is where it all comes from. This is what causes diabetes, but I'm going to show you the secret for making it go away or improving it as much as possible. Okay, you see this big blue oval? That's a cell in your body. So imagine I take a needle and I pull out one muscle cell from your bicep. That's it. That's a muscle cell, okay? Now, muscle cells and other cells of your body, your brain cells, all of them, they really like glucose. Sugar is their favorite fuel, but the sugar is building up in the blood instead of getting into the cell. So your blood sugar is high, but the cell says, wait a minute, I need that glucose. That's going to be my fuel. Well, the glucose cannot get into the cell. Look at that. It's bouncing off the cell membrane. So there are little channels, but they're closed. I need a key. The key is insulin. And here comes the insulin key attaching to the surface of the cell. And when it does, it opens those channels up and the glucose comes inside. Got it? Okay, so insulin is the key that does it. And that brings the sugar inside and everybody's happy. Now, the problem is that we might eat unhealthy foods, fatty stuff. And if I eat either animal fat or even vegetable oils, fat from any source, the fat will enter the cell. And as the fat builds up in the cell, it doesn't stop the key from attaching, but it stops it from working. So it's like trying to open your front door lock when the lock is jammed with chewing gum. There's nothing wrong with your key, but it's not going to open that lock. In this case, your cells are filled with fat so that insulin can't work. That cell is insulin resistant. The medical word for fat inside a muscle cell is intramyocellular lipid, but it's just fat inside muscle cells. Same thing happens in the liver and other cells of the body too. Okay, so now the glucose can't go in because the cell is insulin resistant. What do I do? What I do is, if you're watching this program, imagine this. If I take the animal products out of my diet, I'm gonna have spaghetti tonight, not with beef sauce, meat sauce, no. I'm gonna have it with a marinara sauce and a arrabbiata sauce. It's gonna be all plants. Well, there isn't any animal fat in my diet at all. And if I do that, the fat starts to dissipate. But what makes it dissipate the most is if I also keep vegetable oils to a minimum too. So the fat starts going out of the cell, it dissipates. And now my insulin key can work again, and it opens those channels up, and in comes the glucose. Fabulous. Okay, let me just show a little bit about the research that brought this to us. At Yale University back in the 1990s, like 30 years ago, they did an amazing breakthrough study. They put an IV into the arm of research volunteers and infused lipids, fats, into their veins. And what they showed is that their insulin sensitivity tanked, not within days or weeks, but within hours. So then the same researchers, this was Michael Roden and his team, Michael then moved to Germany, and at the German Diabetes Center, tried this not with an intravenous infusion, but with a fatty meal. One single fatty meal, fat with the palm oil. And the same thing, the insulin resistance got worse, or the insulin sensitivity fell down dramatically. And then, so let me just show you that you've got mitochondria in your cells. They are your burners. You've got fat, and the fat builds up from the fat that you're eating. And that's going to slow down your metabolism. It's going to cause all kinds of problems and make you insulin resistant. So it goes up, it goes down. You want it to go down. So, and the way to do that is by avoiding animal fats completely and keeping vegetable oils really low. So we're going to talk a lot about that, but let me stop my share, and Anna, let's come back. I want to say thanks to all the people who are joining now and people who are wondering then about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates provide that glucose that is the fuel of your body. But if your cells are filled with fat, the carbohydrates are going to make your blood sugar rise a little bit. But as time goes on, as the fat goes out of your cells because of the diet change you're making, that carbohydrate is going to release glucose that goes into the cell. And over the long run, your blood sugar is going to come down and the world is going to be a better place.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much, Dr. Bernard. And
You
one
bet.
question we always get is, how long does it take for that process to reverse itself? How long does it take to get better when you start a low-fat, plant-based diet?
Great question. It's different for different people. For some people, their blood sugars start dropping the very first day or the second or third day, something. I would say for most people, it takes longer. For most people, keep in mind your cells are filled with fat. I think for most people, if you start eating higher carbohydrate foods, rice and beans and things, which is what you should be eating because they don't have the fat in them. But for the first few days, your blood sugars might actually rise a little bit because your cells are still insulin resistant. But as the fat starts coming out of your cells, and as the days are going by, you'll discover that those same foods don't spike your blood sugar so much. Your blood sugar starts to come down. And in the meanwhile, you could kind of take it easy. If you're eating a food that has quite a lot of carbohydrate in, fair enough, but have half now, take a break, 15 or 10 minutes, then finish your meal so that the sugars don't all come in too quickly. And have a walk after the meal. Walking, it's amazing. Your exercising muscles just take that sugar right out of the blood. Drink plenty of water while you do it. Have green vegetables as part of it. So all of those are tips that will help. But for some people, they find it might take a week or two before their blood sugars start to come down. Usually not longer than that. But if you've got a lot of weight to lose, if you've got a distance to travel, you'll see the benefits keep building month after month after month after month.
Awesome. Those are all really good tips. That's very helpful. So the
Sure.
bottom line is try it and stick with it, and you'll see some results.
Exactly, and come back here every Tuesday with and share your results. Share your questions. If you got a frustration or an issue, that's what we're here for. We're here to solve all those things. So stick with us, and we're going to support you along the way.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bernard. And
Yeah.
speaking of, next up, we have something called Bean Camp. So let me share my screen to explain what this is. If you've been here before, you know what we're doing, but this is like boot camp, but it's Bean Camp instead. It's a lot more fun than boot camp. So, hey, Shannon, so glad to have you here. We're gonna see how many beans everyone got. And the reason we do this is just to kind of keep it focused, right? There's a lot of nutrition information out there, but if we can just focus on these main things, then this will keep us going in the right direction. So we're gonna have a poll coming up pretty soon, but basically you can get 4 beans, and we want to hear how your last week went. So you get 1 bean for showing up here today. So you all have that 1 bean. You get a second bean for staying plant-based, so eating those plant foods like beans, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, and then keeping it low in fat. That's the second very important part about the diet. So minimizing oils, looking for foods that have 3 grams of fat or less per serving if it has a label. And then our weekly challenge. Shannon, what was our weekly challenge last week?
So last week we talked about sharing a meal with your loved one, a plant-based healthy meal with one of your loved ones. So that is the 4th bean. I saw Joan in the chat said she keeps forgetting that last weekly challenge. So that was it last week for the sharing it with a loved one.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna dive more into how that went next. But for now, I want to hear how many beans people got. So let us know either in the chat or on the poll if you're at 1 bean, if you're at 2 beans, if you're at 3 beans, or if you're at 4 beans. And if you missed a bean and you want to share which one you missed, which one was hard for you, let us know which ones kind of got you tripped up this week.
I see some eager people in the chat are saying they've got lots of 4s this week. Cheryl,
Nice.
Connie, Mindy. That's great.
Amazing. Congratulations, 4s. Let us know how you do it. How do you get those 4 beans every week? All right, so we'll close this poll in about 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And how's it looking?
Looking good. We've got a good mix. So say 41% of people got 4 beans, which is pretty incredible. Almost half of
That's
the people
awesome.
here got all 4 beans. So please share your wisdom with the rest of us. The next up, 3 beans, which is still amazing. So if you did have a challenge, it looks like 31% of people got 3. So and then a couple people 2 and 1. So if you, again, have any challenges that you want to brainstorm with our dietitians in the Q&A or in the chat with your peers, please let us know and we'd be happy to brainstorm and help you out.
Yeah, we'll do some problem solving. Also, if you're brand new and you weren't here last week, you probably have that 1 bean because it's your first time. So welcome, and we're glad you're
That's
here.
true.
Yeah.
And that is a success.
Yep, that's a success. All right. So speaking of last week's challenge, we want to know how it went. So did you end up sharing a plant-based meal with someone that you love or some friends or some family? How'd it go? What did you share? Let us know. Shannon, did you share a meal with someone that you love?
I was just trying to think about that. You know what? If my partner counts, yes, we shared a meal over the weekend. We cooked a cauliflower, like a sesame cauliflower, like dish with some rice on the sides. That was really tasty. How about you, Anna?
Yeah, same here. I share a meal with my husband. Lately, we've been having a lot of soups. Lentil soup is one of my favorites, and I've been really enjoying I bought myself an immersion blender, so nice blended creamy lentil soup. It's so good.
Ooh, I've heard about the immersion blender. That's a nice way to make soups creamy without having to go to the blender and get things messy. So that sounds nice.
Oh, yeah, it's so good.
Nice.
I see in the chat, we've got Cheryl who says they batch cook for lunch and dinner, and they try a new bean dish with family and kale and bok choy salad. Ooh, sounds so great.
That does sound great. Jill said she shared an acai bowl topped with fruit with her sister. It's starting to get warm out, so those smoothies and acai bowls are starting to sound more appealing.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, and Dustin says he made a chickpea soup for my neighbors. Love that. And Connie shared a salad, spaghetti, and marinara with rye bread. Ooh, great job, Connie.
Yeah, that sounds delicious. See
Oh, and
oh, go ahead.
I saw Richard is having some eggplant over there. That's awesome.
I was
Yeah.
just about to say that. Yeah, an
Yeah.
eggplant sandwich. How creative. That sounds really good.
Way to change things up.
Yeah. Looks like someone went to a vegan potluck. Marcia shared a pasta at a vegan potluck. What a great opportunity to bring a nice vegan dish for lots of other friends and people to try.
Perfect. All right. And we are gonna start thinking about traveling because it's spring and people are starting to want to go out and about as the weather is thawing out. So one more quick question before we get into our main event is checking in. How do you plan for travel, for healthy eating when you travel? Do you research ahead of time? Maybe check out some restaurants that you could go to? Do you like packing your own snacks with you? Maybe you're on a road trip and you can pack snacks, or even better, if you could prep meals if you have an Airbnb. Maybe you do all of these things. Maybe you do none of them. Let us know. So we'll give you about 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, what do people like to do, Shannon?
We've got a good mix. So actually, it looks like about half of us are saying all of the above. So that sounds like a lot of people are currently doing a lot of these things. We did have someone say none of the above. So maybe you'll feel inspired after today to try one of these things. But it seems like of those three things that packing snacks comes in first. 27% of people are doing this for sure.
That's a great strategy. And if you do something else, if you have a different strategy, let us know in the chat.
Absolutely.
All right, so it's now my honor to introduce Chef Dustin Harder. Welcome, Dustin. He's our guest presenter today. Chef Dustin is the culinary specialist here at the Physicians Committee, and he creates amazing and simple, delicious recipes. He's a cookbook author, and he's spent over a decade on the road. So you might recognize him from his culinary travel show called The Vegan Roadie. And he's got some really useful tips for us today on traveling and just how to keep meal prep simple and effective. So over to you, Dustin. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. It's great to be here and great to be here with everyone and seeing all of the amazing suggestions already in the chat for things that people do on travel. So I'm excited to talk about travel and meal prep, a couple of my favorite things. I mean, I think first we need to acknowledge that if you're traveling and you've created a new routine of healthier eating, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be hard, but embracing that is part of the excitement of it. And coming up with different ways and preparing and researching is a great way to go about it so that you can stay on track. I've done everything. I saw someone in the chat saying they pack a can of beans and their can opener. I take travel blenders with me. I've made a quesadilla with a clothing iron and aluminum foil in a hotel room. So I really have done the wildest, wackiest things to stay on track when I'm on the road. So let's talk about it a little bit. Really, for me, it's a mindset, right? So I'm going to give you an acronym. It's NERP, N-E-R-P. So the first thing you want to do when you're traveling, you're on the road, you're looking for healthful options, you go into a restaurant, say you're in the middle of Montana where there isn't anything around, let alone healthful plant-based options. I've been there before. Literally, this happened to me in Montana. You want to be nice. So talk to your server, be nice to them. You know, you're looking at the menu, you're not seeing many options, but you're seeing a side of vegetables over here maybe, and a little dry pasta over here, a soup maybe that looks like it could be vegan. Bring them over, say, hey, you know, I'm eating plant-based, and they're going to say, oh, well, you can have like eggs and cheese, right? Like inevitably that happens. Nicely explain to them the the parameters that you're within, because that's going to help them. That's going to educate them. It's like a passive educational moment for them, right? And then in turn, hopefully you can say, hey, but I see you have this side of broccoli and you have this side salad. Can you take the cheese off that and maybe put the broccoli on there? And then you've got these chickpeas. Maybe you can create this gorgeous plate from a menu that they already have with items they just haven't thought about putting together. So you've now nicely talked to a server who hopefully is talking nicely to that chef. Maybe they've sent the chef over to your table, so you have another opportunity to sort of educate the chef. And then you're going to have this meal come to your table that you get to enjoy. But there are more benefits than just what you're getting out of it when you're being nice, because now you've been nice to that server, you've been nice to that chef, you've created a low-fat plant-based meal with them that now when someone else comes in and says, hey, you know, these are my parameters, they're going to say, oh, we had someone in here, you know, a month ago and we served them this, they loved it. So you really are creating something with long-term effects for other people down the line, right? When you're just being nice, you're getting out there, you're doing your thing, you're traveling, you're being nice. The next one is to get excited. So we're in this wild world where there's tons of plant-based options these days, right? Get excited. You can look ahead, see where you're going, see what restaurants exist. When you really are trying to stay plant-based and low-fat, you want to look for places that have those things. So it's not just going to be any vegan restaurant. You know, there's a lot of comfort food places out there. Maybe they have some healthful smoothies or something on their menu, but there might be some juice shops out there that have a full food menu. So you're going to get some delicious bowls that have everything that you need in it, plus that delicious smoothie on the side potentially that also is going to give you that nutrient dense food that you're looking for, right? So lots of ways to get excited when you do your research. That's the R. So you're going to be nice, you're going to get excited, and then you're going to do your research. And you can use things like the internet, obviously. Google is great, but Happy Cow is a fantastic app that's been around for years. And they usually update it quite often, so you really are seeing what's available. The only caveat I'll give to that is just like make sure you're doing a little cross-reference with your Happy Cow and maybe Google Maps and looking up the restaurant. Make sure it's still open. Look up their updated menu, see what's on there. If it's a little cloudy and you can't really tell, oh, well, is this the old menu? Or hey, it says they have that on one and it's not on the other. Give the restaurant a call and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. What do you have? How can you help me out? When I'm passing on through and I want to eat at your establishment, I want to give you money. How can you help me? And they will be more than happy to talk to you usually because they want your business, right? And then you're going to get prepared. So you're going to be nice. You're going to get excited. You might also look at that E as embracing the journey, right? Get excited about embracing the journey. Get excited because there's going to be all these different plant-based options in front of you on the road. You're going to do your research to see what's out there, and then you're going to be prepared. So if you're out on the road and you don't have anything to eat and you're all boo-hoo, boo-hoo, this is nobody's fault but your own. I've been there before. It's been my fault too. I've been caught in the airport so many times when I just decided, oh, I'm cool, I got it, the airport's got something. And then I find myself at the airport looking for that little container of hummus so that I can just have something to eat because I really didn't prepare. And that was on me, right? And there's lots of different things that you can do to prepare, from investing in a really nice cooler if you're somebody who is into the road trip version of traveling, you know, invest in a nice cooler at the hotel. Call ahead, see if they have a refrigerator. Often they'll say it's for medication. Guess what? Food is medication. And you can rent it for a small fee, so you can have a refrigerator in your room. You can buy a small batch of groceries. You can have your baby carrots, your hummus. You can make a 3-bean salad at home. You can bring it with you, get those bean points in there. You know what I mean? So there's lots of different ways to prepare. And a great way of doing it is also meal prep. So this ties right into the meal prep section of this, right? Okay, so the acronym, you're going to be nice. You're going to get excited. You're going to do your research. And you're going to be prepared. And a great way of being prepared is meal prep. And like I said, this is all a state of mind with this, right? you have to look at the possibilities and sort of the excitement that comes with having creating this lifestyle for yourself that might be different from other people that you're on the road with or traveling with, right? And the truth is, you can set a great example. So put yourself in that mindset of being excited about it, because it is easy to feel for it to be a little daunting, right? But it doesn't have to be. It can be very exciting, especially when you're looking at meal prep. Say you're looking ahead and there are no options for you in your research, and you're like, gosh, I hope I can survive this. That's when that little travel blender comes in handy. And I got to tell you, I have a NutriBullet one now, or not, I got a Ninja one, and it was pricier than my old Hamilton Beach one, which I think was like $15. And that Hamilton Beach one, I miss it now. It served me so well when I was on the road. And it was just whether it was I was making any smoothie I wanted. So I would buy my groceries and I knew I was getting that the nutrients that I needed for that day, right? But also there's meal prep you can do. Wraps travel great and they're hearty and satiating. I think we're going to show you veggie soba noodle bowl today. That is a fantastic meal prep because you're getting yourself a nice meal with it. It can be served hot. It can be served cold. So you really are creating a great option for yourself to have in any given situation. And I want to just address meal prep in terms of what it actually is. A lot of people get very overwhelmed by it. We went on this path about 6 years ago where there was just an onslaught of like how to meal prep. How do you meal prep? Here's all of these books on meal prep. Here's all of these blogs on meal prep. Let me break it down for you. Meal prep is simply a recipe that you're okay eating leftovers of. That's it. That's what meal prep is. It's not anything more than that. It's just a recipe that you're going to be okay eating a couple more times that week. Like it really is just about embracing the leftovers of it. It's not any more advanced than that. It really is just creating a meal that you're going to be okay eating a couple times that week as a leftover. So really that is what meal prep is. It's not meant to be anything more nerve-wracking than that. It should bring you some ease. It should be easy to do. It should be fairly uncomplicated. So don't stress yourself out over meal prep. When you are doing your research, you're getting prepared and doing what else? You're being nice. You're getting excited. You're doing your research. You're being prepared. And that really should create a nice stress-free trip for you, hopefully. And of course, if you want more tips, like Anna said, I did a show called The Vegan Roadie. We have 3 seasons to watch. There's 2 seasons that take place in North America, highlighting tons of different plant-based options in restaurants across North America. And then also we did a season in Italy, which proved to me that I really could eat plant-based anywhere. And when our producing partner came to me for that season, they said, we really want to do a season in Italy. And I was like, why? There can't be anything there beyond, a few little things. Like, how will we do a whole season? And they were like, oh, no, my friend, you will be amazed. And I was. It turns out cheese is not as big of a thing in Italy as I thought it was. Everyone's really all about the vegetables in Italy, the vegetables that they're growing in their backyard most of the time. So I had some of the freshest, most delicious items I've ever had there. I have a cat getting in on my mix here. Anyways, that is traveling in meal prep in a nutshell for me. Thank you so much for having me today.
That's awesome. So many practical tips, Dustin. I think that's really helpful for everyone here. So tell me like your bare minimum meal prep. Say it's a Sunday evening and you haven't done anything yet. What is like the 1 or 2 things that you would do that are most important for the week?
Tofu, I would batch cook tofu, some vegetables like some broccoli and cauliflower. I would steam that. And then also batch cook a little bit of rice. So I can really put anything together quickly. You can add a little sauce to that to season it up. A great way to meal prep is to create almost like a sweet greens bar in your refrigerator where you can pull different items out throughout the week and make different meals. So you can switch it up if you want to.
I love that. I think having vegetables chopped ahead of time just makes such a difference. That's so
Game
key.
changer. Yeah, it
Yeah.
helps you use them up. That's for sure. If you're meal prepping well and you're really budgeting yourself out, it's a big money saver ultimately.
Awesome.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, amazing practical tips. I love it. I especially love the E for excited because I think a lot of people get nervous when traveling or discouraged. So I think just getting excited about trying new cuisines and maybe things that you would never normally try before. Kendra had a question. I'm wondering if you can help us out with. She's wondering about beans. She's saying she has a hard time with the texture of beans and lentils, and she's trying to do some exposure therapy here, but she's wondering do you have any tips for how to incorporate these kinds of foods?
Yeah, sure. That's interesting because my husband also dislikes beans intensely. So mixing them in with different things, making yourself like a sweet potato lentil burger, but maybe if it calls for, like cut the lentils by half and maybe add a little more sweet potato. And then if you find out you like it, you add more lentils in the next time. And mixing them into different things. So if it's like a soup and it's a lentil soup, maybe you don't use, there was one I saw that was lentils and something else. So like if it's a mixture soup, if there's a bunch of vegetables in there, maybe you do more vegetables than lentils, but that way you're doing that sort of exposure therapy to it and you're getting a little bit of it, but you're not just having this, 3-bean chili or something like that right off the bat. Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. And good that you have firsthand experience. So thanks for
Truly,
sharing your
truly.
tips.
He still gets a little cranky sometimes. I'm like, oops, I put too much in there.
The ratio is a little off.
Yep.
Thanks, Dustin.
For sure.
That's good to know.
Yeah, a
Okay,
lot of people
another.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, we have another recipe question for you, Dustin. So low-fat muffins. Connie is wondering how to make them less dense. Do you have experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, so often the fat's coming in because a lot of the oil that gets put into muffins and stuff like that. And I have found myself, if I use like unsweetened applesauce or something like that, I tend to put a little more of that in for moisture than what the recipe calls for because I've run into that same problem. I've been cooking a lot lately from Catherine Perez's cookbook, The Peaceful Kitchen. And she uses a low-fat plain vegan yogurt in these muffins that I absolutely love. But I did the same there. I added like a little more just to make the moisture just a little more prevalent than it was before. But you can't go overboard because you still want to have the good bake at the end of it, of course.
So adding a
Connie-
little moisture, it sounds like that's the key.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's also wondering what sauce for the tofu rice veggie prep that you use, or would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is where Google is your best friend. You could look up a low-fat teriyaki sauce, right? And those are things I look up, but so I have a cookbook podcast, everybody, called Keep On Cooking, if you want some cookbook inspiration. So I meet all these wonderful authors. There is this author, Nava Atlas, and she had a protein book. So there's a teriyaki sauce I make from there all the time. The book that Dr. Barnard just released, Power Foods Diet this last year, I have like a Power Greens pesto in there. So it's loaded with like spinach and kale. So think of your favorite sauces and then look up a low-fat plant-based version of it. I guarantee someone has created an oil-free variation out there for you to use. But I also like roasted red peppers. So I'll get roasted red peppers like in a jar. And then I'll just whiz that up maybe with a little nutritional yeast and maybe like a little bit of silken tofu to make a roasted red pepper sauce. So there's lots of variations you can use. I like to usually have like 2 sauces on hand in my fridge that I can mix things up with. There's also a great PCRM, just as an aside, PCRM.org. If you look up Caesar dressing, there's a fantastic low-fat Caesar dressing that I like to have on hand as well. So think of your favorite sauce and then look up ways to make that fit into your parameters, essentially. That's a great way to go about it.
Here's one secret too, teriyaki sauce. I think you can just buy it from the store. It's naturally, I think most of the time, it's going to be low in fat, and check for any weird ingredients like fish or shrimp. But I think normally it's going to be fine just to buy from the store if you're pressed for time.
100%. And I want to add, before y'all wrap up with me, I just want to hit home again something that you said in the beginning about getting back on track. That is the same with traveling. So I think for the longest time, for many, many years, I was like, okay, time to travel. My diet's out the window. I'm going to do whatever I want, right? And I don't think that is the worst thing in the world as long as you get back on track. I'm not saying you should throw everything out the window when you travel. Fortunately, I've found certain things that work for me when I travel now, so I'm able to stay on track. But if I do fall off a little bit, it really is like anything else. You just have to be committed to getting back on. That's really where the progress comes, when you're like, okay, so I had a couple days, I traveled, I did the thing. Now I'm going to get home. I'm going to make myself some green smoothies. I'm going to meal prep my bowls and my delicious food, the things that I know and crave. Restaurants are cooking craveable food. So most restaurants are not cooking a health forward dish, right? Even when they label it healthy. So it's important to make those choices when you're out the best that you can. But that means when you get home, your body's going to be craving all those wonderful nutrients that you've been missing. So be kind to yourself and just get back on track when you get home and create that food that you know you love so much and you missed.
Thank you so much, Dustin. I think that's the most helpful approach, and we really appreciate you here. And I'm going to second what Kendra said in the chat. Love the perspective on balancing things in life. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your perspective, Dustin.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Thanks,
And
Dustin.
before we move on, I just want to do a pop quiz and see who is paying attention to this acronym that Dustin shared. So what does it stand for? We've got NERP. Does it stand for new, engaging, resourceful, and practical? Nice, excited, research, prepare, nourish, energize, reflect, persist, navigate, explore, reinvent, and progress. So these are all good options. Which one did Dustin talk about? I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, Shannon, what was the correct answer?
All right, the correct answer was nice, excited, research, and prepare. So 25 of us got that, 76%. So good
Great.
paying attention.
Good job, everyone. That's awesome. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. Well, I would love to bring on our next very special guest today. We have Lauren Plunkett. She works as a registered dietitian, diabetes care and education specialist, indoor cycling instructor, public speaker, and award-winning author of Type 1 Determination. She's lived with type 1 diabetes for nearly 3 decades and credits her plant-based lifestyle of over 13 years as the key to sustainable long-term health. So I will let her take the floor and share her story. Thanks for being here, Lauren.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, thanks everybody for having me. Welcome to my my living room here. I guess it's a whole living room. This is my office, but it certainly feels like a living room. I usually have cats walking around everywhere too, so we'll see if we get any little furry visitors for today. So really why I'm here with PCRM is to tell you a little bit about what it's like living with diabetes and growing up in the clinic, and then learning how to save myself and figuring out how to live and thrive despite what I was taught at a very young age, which was quite honestly almost completely the opposite of how I live my life today. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 11 years old, and that was 1993. We didn't have quite the technology or the fast-acting insulin then as we do now. And as you probably can imagine, for anyone who has been living with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, and you've had any kind of education around what to do when you get diagnosed with diabetes, is that carbohydrate fear can be one of those very first conversations that you hear when you're diagnosed. Hopefully some of that has changed in some clinics around, but when I was a kid, put it this way, before I hit puberty, I knew how to count calories, I knew how to calculate grams, and I knew how to give myself insulin injections with a needle in my thighs. So I really knew what I was doing before I had hit 13 years old. So growing up in the clinical system is certainly not easy. I kind of describe it as the hormonal apocalypse that I was living with as I was starting to grow up and try to work with this body that I had. And yet growing up really fast is kind of part of what type 1 does to a kid, is you have to learn how not to accidentally kill yourself with insulin, and you have to be very aware of everything that you're eating at the same time. So there are so many challenges with this. Now, I'm going to fast forward just a second, is what I've now learned today as an adult working in the business of diabetes, as well as having it personally, is that the difference between the things that people with type 1 diabetes that's incurable struggle with and the thing that people with type 2 diabetes struggle with are not that different. We really are trying to overcome a lot of the same barriers, so much of it having to do with nutrition and exercise and sleep and stress management and life, right? Life affects our metabolic health. So now that I know all of this, I've been able to really engage in these lifestyle habits to do something about it. But it took me 15 years of miserable health to get there. So I really do understand a lot about what it's like to walk in the shoes of someone who's been diagnosed with diabetes later on in life and dealt with it for many, many years with a lot of medications to finally come across some of these lifestyle solutions and wonder, why didn't anyone tell me sooner? And I have the chat box over here. If anybody is feeling me, I can totally see what you're saying. If you're wondering, why didn't anybody tell me about plant-based nutrition sooner? Well, we don't often change until we're ready to, until we decide, until we want to. So I had finally decided after my teenage years, getting out on my own, I'm trying to be my own person and figure it out. I really tried to run from diabetes, and I can't do that with type 1. And so I had this kind of epiphany realization, fork in the road, so to speak, that when you live with type 1, you're either going to get healthier or you're not. The middle ground is no way to exist. The middle ground is only going to progress to something that's probably not healthy. So I had to make some serious decisions. And now we're looking at 2008. So it's been quite a while now. I'm going to have to update my bio. I think, Shannon, I hadn't thought about that. But I stopped eating meat overnight. I did not have any external motivation really for this. I wasn't following PCRM at that time. It was a long time ago. And I realized that for one thing, I have a moral connection. I like my animals better alive. So it wasn't really a hard decision, but I also wanted to find out what would happen because I grew up with the impression that cheese stick, beef sticks, and sugar-free Jell-O was a meal. I grew up thinking that was okay because it quote unquote didn't affect my blood sugar. But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of our system? So we see this surface level blood sugar maybe isn't changing too much when we eat a whole bunch of animal protein and fat, but internally, what in the heck is happening at the cellular level? And also, why was I so miserable in my health if I was eating that way? So overnight, I made some decisions. I'm just going to stop eating meat. And I also started to include a daily salad, just your leafy greens. I thought, what does everyone know is healthy? Well, okay, let me go to the store and get some salad kits and start working on that. Within the first month of doing this, I knew I was having more low blood sugars and I didn't really know why. Going on the second month of this, I see my endocrinologist and say, I'm having even more lows. My energy is really good, but here's the deal, doc. I'm eating way more carbohydrates at this point because vegetables are carbs. Everybody write that down. Veggies are carbs. We have to change our language around what carbohydrates are. They're the good guys. Veggies are carbs. So carbohydrates are not the bad boys of diabetes. These are the good guys. I'm eating more carbs. I need less insulin. What is happening to me? And I honestly thought I was a study of one. Like, this is not in existence. What is happening? And I also started going back to school at that time as well. And I decided I was going to bite the bullet and I was going to try to become a registered dietitian. And I fought. I did not want to get into this business. So I was taking the courses at the same time. I was starting to learn more about this chemistry. And my endocrinologist honestly said, I don't know, but we're going to adjust your insulin. I was sent to a couple of dietitians that I don't know. All I did was talk about hummus. It was awakening. So now I'm finding out that I'm becoming more insulin sensitive. Now this is a word in the space of type 1 diabetes. Insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance is just as much relevant in type 1 diabetes as it is in type 2 diabetes, and this process of trying to go into remission or reduce insulin resistance to prevent the progression of pre-diabetes as well. It is so relevant in type 1 diabetes, and I have traveled the country and I have met people with type 1. Insulin resistance is rarely talked about, but what is often talked about is if someone with diabetes comes into their endocrinologist, they have type 1, and their A1C isn't at goal, the first solution is just to jack up their insulin. You need more insulin versus looking at the diet and seeing, wow, you're sure having a lot of protein and fat because that's what we initially taught you to eat. But it sure is a fact that the way that we've been traditionally taught to eat in type 1 diabetes and in type 2 is exactly how it creates insulin resistance in the first place. We are not learning insulin sensitivity. We are learning the process of actually becoming more resistant. So I have spent my life at this point since I went plant-based, and it was gradual for me, which I encourage for people. Do what is familiar, do what is comforting to you. So for me, I was able to eliminate meat quite easily, but it took a few years for me to realize that if I didn't have any dairy in my body, I felt incredibly better. Then I became more athletic. I was recovering more. I was so much more comfortable in my body. Next thing you know, I'm taking an indoor cycling class, and I said, you know what? I could do this. I'm going to be an instructor. So I've been teaching indoor cycling classes, which is like high intensity stuff, for 15 years on a 100% plant-based diet at this point. I feel like I've aged in reverse. I feel like my attitude is better. I feel like my mental clarity is somewhere it was never. I have a healthier heart rate now than I did when I was a teenager. So it wasn't just the plants that did this. I realized that me going into plant-based nutrition inspired me to learn more about my body. It inspired me to understand how stress impacted me, because I was extremely stressed out in the process of just living with diabetes. And then I progressed into becoming a dietitian and a certified diabetes educator, which really gave me the cred now to start talking about this more widely with more people. So that's why I started speaking about this kind of all over the country. And it's kind of just, moved and moved and moved. And then I wrote a book about that experience, what it's like to grow up in the clinic and actually figure out how to save yourself, really focused on nutrition and exercise. So you can be your own inspiration. You can be the person that you needed the most when you were diagnosed with something. We have so many resources out here. I've spread PCRM information all over the country when I go to diabetes conferences. So you're in a really good place, really good hands. And so I think I've probably given you enough of a spiel here. Maybe I should let you guys ask some questions. What do you think, Anna?
Thank you so much. That is such an inspiring story. I feel like everyone is just glued to the screen listening to your experience, Lauren.
Yay.
So thank you for being here. And
Thank you for having me.
I agree how crazy it is that the foods that they teach you to eat for type 1 diabetes are actually causing the problem to get worse. And it's just amazing that you're able to figure out a way out of that kind of cycle.
Yeah, it can be done, right? It's hard to, for everyone to know, I actually ended up working in the same endocrinology clinic where I was diagnosed. I was working in that pediatric clinic. And if there was ever a time that I needed therapy, it was then. It was opening a drawer and seeing the same handouts that I was given when I was a kid that were still being recycled versus like, hold on a minute, or we're kind of missing the mark constantly. And I realized that I went completely rogue when I was there. I would go into a room and I would see a teenage girl that looked just like me with her parents. And I would say, hey, I saw you just made the volleyball team. Tell me about it. Versus tell me what you think about your A1C and carb counting. So language has become a really important skill for me to understand, because diabetes runs so deep into our emotional health too, while at the same time I was trying to work through my own. We have to be able to connect, right, on a kind of a deeper level
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a question that we had for you, is how do you keep people in like more of a positive headspace rather than kind of getting too discouraged or feeling down about their numbers?
Oh gosh. That's a workshop right there, isn't it? Well, we tend to really connect our self-worth to our blood glucose. We tend to think good, bad, where we go shame first. A lot of the times we wake up in the morning, if that number isn't where we want it, we are actually allowing the technology to dictate our self-worth also. So there's a lot of checkpoints that we need to have. Like, if I'm looking at my continuous glucose monitor right now, I know how long I've been sitting in this chair. And if I was moving around, my glucose average would be a little lower than it is right now. It's looking at the external factors can actually help us. It can help our attitude, and it's building healthy habits around those numbers that can help to change things. Is what do we have control over? And sometimes we don't have control over everything, but it's doing the best that we can in those moments. It's knowing that the majority of the time we're eating in a way that's going to help increase insulin sensitivity versus beating ourselves up over going out to eat over the weekend. The good positive moments, if we focus on more of those, we can be inspired to continue them. If we continue to focus on the moments that are really hard on us, they can spread. So we want to surround ourselves with a team also. Like the gym for me. I've got so much fun with the people that come to my classes. You know, we just give it both ways and it's a really good time. And I cannot speak highly enough about the power of group fitness. And that comes to ride groups, run groups, walk clubs, showing up for other people to a class can really help because diabetes, we feel singular in this life with diabetes, but we are over 500 million people on the planet. And not just us that are diagnosed, there's a whole bunch of other, like 1 out of 3 that have pre-diabetes. So like insulin resistance is not just a diabetes issue. Insulin resistance can be present in so many other disease states. So the more that we are aware of this and we're around each other, even if we're not talking about our medical issues, we are actually always inspiring each other to get a little healthier.
Those are great tips, Lauren. And this might actually go into this question that we got from an anonymous attendee today, but they were asking if you know a loved one or a family member in this case with type 2 diabetes, but hasn't changed their nutrition or their lifestyle, what can we do? And I know this might be a long answer, but do you have any quick tips or any suggestions? that could
Yeah,
help?
something to think about is even if you cook for them, even if you're trying to bring them something and have them try it, and if they're willing to do that, fantastic. But realizing that the way people think about their lives and hope and what they have left and where they currently are, that's not always something that's our job to break into, to try to get into their shoes and walk for them. Constantly being a light for people who may feel like they don't have a lot of hope. Helping people feel enriched and engaged in something. Like you would start with, if this is someone who loves to do puzzles, if this is someone who loves to just go for walks or bird watching, if this is someone that has a hobby, if you can find something they love, that's what you leverage to get them to open up potentially a little bit more to you. So, I mean, these are super, super baby steps. But anytime you can potentially help remove someone from that environmental space of feeling kind of sad or down or shameful, like heading to a park and bird watching or breaking out a brand new puzzle and getting them engaged in a mentally stimulating or breathing the air around them outside, these can really help someone see that there is more to life than being sad and in that space. So I would start with what does somebody love and get into their heart with their own style. And then potentially you could introduce a meal or a cooking process or say, hey, you could have this for breakfast every day now. So little things like that. Nutrition's a little bit of a sale, right? But when we really know people that we love, that's how we get in. We got to get into the heart.
Keep planting the seeds and we'll keep planting and they'll grow and they'll be ready and we'll keep watering them, but
Yep.
leading by example, but they'll get there when they get there. Thanks for
Mhm.
sharing, Lauren. We so appreciate you being here today and sharing your story and tips for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to share my screen and round out today's session for us. So you may have noticed Dr. Becker is not with us today. So if you're missing her or her voice, we have a great podcast episode, Seed Oils. So she was on the exam room with Chuck Carroll. And this is a topic that's just been coming up a lot with my patients recently, and I know in the media, and we're hearing it a lot. So this is kind of just cutting straight to the facts and to the science and talking about kind of debunking some myths and things we're hearing about in the media. So any of your questions on seed oils, we would recommend to check out this podcast episode. And Chef Dustin mentioned earlier, we have a couple really yummy recipes that you can try, and these are great for traveling as well. So this quickie quesadilla, you can just easily get some hummus, tortillas, whatever veggies you want to use in the middle, like onions, tomatoes, salsa. And this can be a really yummy, quick, easy thing at home or on the road. And he also mentioned this veggie soba noodle bowl that can be eaten hot or cold. Actually, he mentioned is really great for travel. So check out these recipes this week. Anna mentioned these already, but yeah, reminder to take your B12 supplement and work with your physicians and make sure your medications and checking your blood pressure and blood sugars regularly. Make adjustments as needed. So this week, your goal, your challenge is to make a list of travel-friendly snacks and meals that you enjoy so you can easily come back to this list for next time when you're traveling or you're on the road. So have this list ready to go for your future self. This is our video this week with our lovely dietitian, Stephanie McBurnett, getting the support you need. So you can find that on the National Diabetes Program website. And just from some additional resources for you to check out this week, the Proteinaholic book. And if you're looking for a doctor or a dietitian that you would ideally want to also practice what we're preaching, so plant-based nutrition and is educated in this, you can go to our Find a Doctor or Dietitian links here. And you can type in where you live if you want to meet telehealth, virtual, or in person, and you can find a dietitian or a doctor nearby. So that is everything we have for you today. I'll bring back everybody who shared today. So Chef Dustin, Dr. Barnard, Lauren, and our dietitians, Noah and Steph. And we wish you a lovely week, and we hope to see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you.